And we're being recorded now. Looky, 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 looky. All right, there we go. Well, hello, everybody. So obviously, Chris, No Boundaries Marketing Group, also on the marketing committee here with the Glendale Chamber. So today's class is going to be on local listings. And fortunately for all of you, it's a relatively short class, only because it's really not a whole lot to this. However, it is super, super, super important for businesses. So we're going to go into a few of these things here. Obviously, I'm sharing my screen. You can see here, I just pulled up business.com. They have a list of these, and I can send these out as well if you want. But just to kind of help everybody understand what we're going to talk about today. So local listings, what are they? Likely places you've never even heard of. That's okay. Whether or not you and I have ever heard of them, used them, you've ever gotten a client off of them or not. The point is Google has, and the major search engines have, and they rely on this information to validate the listings for local businesses. I know it sounds ridiculous, but one of the biggest pet peeves I have out there is incorrect information, right? And I think every business owner would likely share that sentiment. Big picture is, if you've ever gone in, and let's just use an example, you've ever searched for your business and you've moved locations a couple of times, and you cannot get rid of that like MapQuest link that shows the old address like 7 years ago, right? And it just annoys you. You just want to like eliminate MapQuest from the face of the earth. So I get it. And I'm going to explain to you why things are the way that they are and how we fix this stuff. So again, what is a local listing? Let's start there. Local listings are, again, they're businesses, just you and me. There's no different. They are what's called data aggregators. So what they do is they compile data in the hopes that they more than likely sell ad space, but they're providing a resource and source to locate a local business. Now we use local listings obviously from a B2B perspective. They, on the other hand, use it from a B2C perspective. They're trying to connect businesses with consumers. So little bit different model, but there's two fronts to it. So the local listings, most of us have heard of things like Google My Business, Yelp, Bing Places, even Facebook has a local places, so a local listing section. We'll talk about that. The BBB, Angie's List, again, a lot of the big ones that you can see here in this top 10 list are pretty familiar to most businesses. What's not are these bottom like 50 down here. Silex, well, Apple Maps pretty popular. I don't know who hasn't heard of that one, but BizWiki or Hot Frog or Yellowbot or, Show Me Local. Again, whether you've heard of these or not, they're still an invaluable resource that they provide. So why is this important? Well, at the end of the day, again, twofold. We don't really care where a consumer comes from. We just want them to find us, right? The other part of it is we want Google to view us as a trusted authority. And that gets really difficult from Google's perspective when there's so much misinformation out there. So the example or analogy that I give to business owners is simple. When we look at a local listing, we're trying to debate on how much effort we want to put into this, right? Because I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to take you guys some time to do. It's nothing that's going to happen overnight. But if I'm going to take the time to go in there and troubleshoot my Yelp listing and try to figure out why that one's wrong and how to update it and do all this stuff, is it really going to drive me any clients? Again, the answer is always yes. Yes to all of these. Because again, whether or not a consumer goes there, just please, please, please remember the major search engines do. It is all about consistency. Again, another example that I would give you, if we have two of the same businesses side by side, I have, let's just use mine, No Boundaries Marketing Group, and I have Marketing Group ABC over here next to me. You know what? My stuff is inconsistent. I've moved a couple of times. My address and phone number have changed. Google may or may not know where in the heck I'm even at. Here's this marketing company over here. Everything's high and tight. Every local listing is consistent. Everything looks the same. Phone numbers are accurate. Website listings accurate. Pictures, all sorts of fun stuff there. They're probably going to go with this one over here. This is, again, among many, many, many ranking attributes that they have. That's just one of them that's going to put that business just a little bit higher than me. So again, in this super, uber competitive world of online advertising, it's anything to get an advantage over the competitor, and this is just one way to do it. So let's start talking about how do we manage this universe, because again, even though there's 50 of them here, believe me when I say that's a small, small drop in the hat. There's hundreds and hundreds of local listing sites out there. And again, if you think you didn't know these, you certainly don't know the other ones. But big picture wise, there's actually some really easy ways and not so easy ways to do it. I'm going to tell you both because you get to make the decision for yourself as to which one you want to utilize. So in the big picture here, let's look at Yelp, for example. Now, what makes an awesome business listing? Well, one that's complete first. Let's start there. The most important thing about any local listing is that it's consistent. So I'll log into, let's just go Yelp for Business. Let me log into mine. Let's see if I remember the password. That's also, oh, let's just do this. I think I logged in with my Gmail. We'll find out here. Maybe, possibly is going to be a good day. I think it's a great day. Look at that. All right, so this is one of our clients, cardiovascular consultants. They're an amazing group here in the Valley. So looking at this, just a couple of things that we want to point out. And again, the key to an awesome profile is just accuracy. That's the best way to put it. We want to make sure absolutely everything is accurate, is consistent. We've added photos, we have logos, we have all the key visuals that you're looking for. And again, every profile is going to be different. So that's where kind of the tough part comes in. So when we're looking at this, again, it's important for you to do this. Go into all of your different tabs over here. And again, Yelp is notorious. They charge some money for certain things. Again, if you find value in it, fantastic. If you don't, you don't. Again, I'm not going to coach to that. I think that's for each business owner to decide. But when we look at this, again, we got to make sure the business information is correct. We got to make sure photos, we've added photos, videos. Believe it or not, yes, some of these listings do charge for that. But, you know, again, I'll leave it to you to decide how much value there is or isn't in adding those. I'm a big advocate. So when somebody types in my listing, so if it's No Boundaries Marketing Group, Surprise, Arizona, I just want to make sure that I put my best foot forward. I want to make sure that my brand is consistent. I want to make sure that there's photos and all sorts of stuff. And that it starts with this. So again, you can see here, I'll just click on our Yelp page. Let me get out of that. Again, we have relative photos, logos, and reviews. Our listing is claimed, correct categories. I mean, like I said, it's pretty self-explanatory at the end of the day, but I just want to make sure that we harp on this a little bit, is that it's all about consistency, and we want to make sure that we have these key visuals in there for business owners or for my clients or potential clients to see. So that's Yelp. Obviously, we have the big fish or the lion in the room, if you will, Google. So Google My Business, if you haven't set that up yet, that'll be a whole nother conversation or a whole nother training class. There's a lot of great stuff with Google My Business. And so I will show you a couple of little things that I would encourage you guys to do. So I'm going to log into mine here real quick. Once Google decides to do what I want it to do. So if you've never set one up or you don't know how, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to download the app on your phone. It's much easier to manage that profile from your phone than it is from the desktop, but you can do it all the same. I come in here to Google My Business. Now, again, I obviously have clients and all sorts of stuff in here, but this is what you need to see. So when you come over here into Google My Business, just remember, it's so important to fill this out and make sure that it's accurate, but more importantly, especially with Google and Yelp, you got to maintain these. You want to make sure that you're updating them, I would say, on a consistent basis. One of the ways that Google's going to encourage that is through posts right here. And again, this is, you can see our recent posts when we're posting and stuff like this. Again, this is Google's attempt at social media for small business or for business as a whole. So it's just a phenomenal, amazing way for you to gain traffic with, just doing what you always do. If you're already posting on Facebook, it's really not hard to post on here as well. So just food for thought. This is the way you maintain and keep consistent with Google. Info, again, fill out anything and everything that you can. Have a main category and subcategories. And again, just make sure that they're accurate and relative to what you do. If you have a location, again, location-based. Hours of operation, make sure they're consistent. You want to make sure that you look at your website and everything else. You don't want your website saying 7 a.m. to 5, but Google, you're saying 7 to 7. Well, that doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent. If you're closed on specific days, again, this goes for other listing sites. You want to make sure that you tell people that because it's important for them to understand, hey, I can expect to call No Boundaries Marketing Group on Monday, and they're actually going to answer their phone. Or if we're closed, guess what? That tells them that too. Phone number, all the fun stuff. So again, just go in here and do the best you can to add as many categories as many services or add your product. Fill this out in its entirety, because this is what's going to be the key to success with local listings. Now, again, we've shown a lot with Google here. That also applies to Yelp. That applies to a lot of these. Now, as we go through this list, obviously there are some that are more valuable than others, and I think most of them are common sense. Yelp is the default reviews engine for Yahoo and Bing. So when you go to Bing and you search for a business, if you're from Washington and that's all you use up there, well, fantastic. You're going to see the reviews from Yelp. If you're a Google user, you're going to see Google. So that's why we need these two. Bing Places, again, even though Bing uses Yelp reviews, Bing by itself has its own list or its own listing service. So that's really important. Facebook, even if you don't have a profile on Facebook, a business profile, you can still create a local listings page. Many of us have seen those where it's kind of a weird blank page, if you will. Not blank page, I shouldn't say that. It just looks different. I don't really know how to describe it other than to say it's different. But again, each business, even if you hate Facebook, you want nothing to do with them, you can still create a local listing there. The BBB, I think we all know those guys. The BBB is fantastic. One that's not listed in here is, again, you might see chambercommerce.com. That is not the Glendale Chamber or a local chamber of commerce. That's a national company. But a local listing is also the chambers. Those are phenomenal. I mean, I can't tell you how valuable a chamber listing is. And I'm not saying that just because I'm teaching class at the chamber. In all seriousness, the chamber is a phenomenal resource from a local listings perspective. And oftentimes, especially if you've been in business and you've been a chamber member for a while, you know that your chamber listing usually is right there on the first page with you. So again, they tend to provide a lot of gusto, if you will, for businesses. So again, one of those really valuable resources. Angie's List, again, not for every business, but Angie's List, or I forget, they just rebranded to something else now. I think it was Angie's List. I think it's just Angie's, now. So you got Merchant Circle, even LinkedIn, creating a LinkedIn business page, YP or yellowpages.com. Fantastic. I actually used to work for that company. They're fantastic. That's a great local listing. Whitepages.com, Yellowbook, City Search, MapQuest, Local.com. Again, the list goes on and on and on. The important thing that I want business owners to understand is, again, when you commit to doing this, the most important thing is accuracy, imagery, and follow-up. Those are the things that you really need to make sure that you do. Again, this is how we prevent our information from going cattywampus. That's how we, clean up old listings. We do this. It's a tedious process. I get it, and it's not fun. The most frustrating part is I'll just play around. But let's say you go to Merchant Circle, you update your listing. Next thing you know, 2 weeks later, it's changed again. Again, I can explain why that happens, but just make sure you're consistent with it, and then you just go back in, you update it. You should have created your login. Like I said, normally that won't happen, but in the rare instance it does. Normally it's because, again, as data aggregators, what happens is these guys buy information from these guys, who buy information from these guys, who buy information from these guys, and so on. What ends up happening is, if this guy has the wrong information over here and he sold it to this guy over here, well, they're obviously not going to have the right information now. That's typically what happens with data aggregation, is one person has the wrong thing, and then all of a sudden it affects everything else. The way to mitigate that, claim your profiles, complete your listings. As you go through here, just again, setting the right expectations. Unfortunately, the byproduct of setting these up is going to be, they're going to want you to advertise with them. You are going to start getting a lot of solicitation calls. And if you're like us, and you already get a ton of those as is, prepare for a few more. It'll subside in a handful of months. Normally when they, you yell at them enough, they'll stop. But, in all seriousness, just prepare yourself in advance, prepare your staff in advance. You're going to see an influx in calls. And I mean, it is what it is. They're providing a free service for you typically, sometimes a paid one, but they're providing a service for you. And again, they're just trying to earn theirs. So, I mean, let's not hate them. Let's just appreciate the process and move on. But with this, like I said, I can send out a more detailed list. Again, it's not rocket science. It's actually really, really easy to do. It's just time consuming. There's sadly none of these follow the same direction. I mean, every one seemingly is different and they have a different way to do something. So it's something you've got to commit some time to. I always tell our clients that we consult with, I say, hey, like plan it out. Hey, I'm going to do 5 a week. Commit to 5, do 5, and do 5 next week and next week and next week. Eventually you'll get there, and it's a good way to manage the time so you don't go stir crazy just submitting the same information over and over and over again. A couple of pro tips in this is that when you're creating these listings, try not to copy all the information from your website. We want to try to make them unique in their own respect, because really what we want is we want these listings to rank. We want people to find us. And the only way that's going to happen is through unique content. Just always remember that no matter what you're doing, is you want your website to be whole. You want your website to be that, great first impression that a client gets. And then you want these other sources to supplement that or complement that, is probably the best way to put it. And the way that we complement is we might say the same thing, we just might say it a different way, if that makes any sense. So try to customize this. I would say if all else fails, just having it would be more beneficial than not. So if you just don't have time to customize, then fantastic. But always go in with the best of intentions. Also make sure your imagery, you can use the same images across the board. Just make sure they're yours. That's a really important one. So just make sure you take some pictures. Again, you don't need Spielberg work. You don't need, some, top of the line photographer. I mean, again, those services are, in my opinion, very, very valuable. And I really want to support that industry because, again, they do great work, and those high quality dynamic visuals are important. But if it's the difference of doing a listing and not, I would say I'd take cell phone pictures for all I care. We just want to make sure that we get these up. And again, we can always update these down the road. But try to make sure they're relative. Even with most modern phones, they really do take a great picture. So it's not even to say we're accepting lower quality. That's not the case at all. I think most of these cameras take good pictures now. So next up, and the last thing that we'll cover today, there is an easier way. I don't necessarily endorse it, but for those businesses that are just strapped for time and cannot manage this any other way, there are listing management services out there. Companies like Yext is one, Moz is one. There's a variety of them out there. And what they do is they'll go out from an enterprise level and they'll claim these listings for you. They have agreements with each of these companies that they go in and they do the dirty work for you for a fee. Is there a pro and con to that? Of course, just like anything. With local listings, I'm always a big fan of do it yourself. Even for us as a business, when we sign on a client, I have access to Yext, I have access to those listing services, and I could do that for clients. We choose a different route because we know that when a business owner claims them personally, there are a lot less issues. We know that things get done right. So I'm a huge fan of manually claiming all of your listings. Does that mean that you can't use Yext? Of course not. There are definitely viable options there. Yext is a great company and they provide a great service. Same thing with Moz. Again, they have these listing services that'll do this for you for a fee. Last I heard, off the top of my head, fees range from like $50 to $150, depending on how many listings they're doing, and you pay that every single month. The caveat to this is simple. Where they come into where they excel or provide a valuable service is the updating. It makes it very easy and time efficient to update one place and then they disseminate the information. The problem with that is that information doesn't always get disseminated. Even though the technology is there and they say they're doing it, it's nothing against them. Just sometimes things don't work the way that it was intended. I know I've used Yext subscriptions personally before, and sometimes they've worked great, and other times we've run into issues. Who knows the reason? Who knows why? But again, there's pros and cons to everything. So again, I'm a fan. Manually claim them. I would say a pro tip for that is when you claim your listings, I would always create let's just call it a marketing email. So like what we do for clients is we might have abcbusiness.marketing@gmail.com. We'll create our own email account. So that way we're not getting hit up with all this spam and all these emails. Create a marketing email for it. Super easy. Go create a Gmail, do whatever you want to do. Send all your local listings there. Just make sure that you check that because again, Yelp, somebody can request a quote from you on Yelp. So kind of important that, you have that, you're able to answer that. Google My Business, again, I would use that one, Yelp and Google, Bing, Facebook. These are ones that I would probably tend to use my own email address and just suck up the spam. The other ones, again, that you probably won't see any traffic from consumers on, perfectly acceptable to do a listing email. So I know that's a ton of information. So let's go ahead and open it up to some questions.